Have you ever had a moment when the world around you seemed perfectly normal, peaceful, even warm with the comfort of family, and then suddenly, without warning, everything tilted into something terrifying, a moment that burned itself into your memory forever? That is exactly what happened to me that night, and before I tell you what the text message said, let me ask you to stay with me until the end of this story because it will leave you questioning what you thought you knew about safety, about family, and about trust itself. And if you want more stories like this, strange, shocking, and deeply human, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one of these moments, because every story here is not just a tale, but a reminder of how fragile our lives can be. I was having dinner with my son at a small family restaurant that we often visited on Friday evenings. The lighting was warm and golden, the hum of conversation low, and the clinking of silverware created a steady background rhythm. My son, sitting across from me, was laughing at some small joke, his fork tapping gently against his plate. It felt like one of those rare, perfect evenings, just a father and son enjoying a meal together, away from the world's noise. But as I reached for my glass of water, my phone buzzed against the table. At first, I thought it was just a work message or maybe a reminder notification, but when I glanced at the screen, my hand froze. The words there didn't belong to any ordinary life. They didn't belong to dinner or laughter or normalcy. They were sharp, commanding, and utterly chilling. Get up and go. Don't say anything to your son. My chest tightened, my heart thudded so loudly I thought others might hear it. My son noticed my sudden stillness and tilted his head, his smile fading slightly as he asked, "Dad, is everything okay?" In that moment, I was split in two, one part of me desperate to keep him calm and unaware, the other part of me seized by a rising tide of panic. Who sent this message? How did they know where we were? And why was I being told not to tell my own child? I slipped the phone under the table and reread the words, hoping I had misunderstood, but no, there it was, blunt and undeniable. My eyes scanned the restaurant instinctively, looking for something, anything, that explained this, but all I saw were strangers chewing their meals, waiters carrying trays, and the gentle glow of the hanging lights. Yet suddenly, every face looked suspicious, every shadow too deep, every movement too deliberate. My hands were trembling slightly, but I forced a smile at my son, pretending nothing was wrong. Inside, though, my mind was spiraling, running through possibilities, each one darker than the last. I sat there frozen for what felt like an eternity, my fork hovering halfway to my mouth as though the world itself had paused, holding its breath. My son, oblivious to the storm beginning inside my head, kept talking about his day at school, the kids he played soccer with, and the project he was working on for science class. His voice was bright, full of the innocence only children can carry, and with every word he spoke, my fear multiplied. Whoever had sent that text, whoever knew enough to tell me to leave without explaining, also knew I was with him. That thought alone made the air feel heavier, made the shadows stretching across the restaurant floor seem sharper, darker, alive. I glanced at the screen again under the table, hoping for another message, some clarification, but none came. Just the single chilling command, "Get up and go. Don't say anything to your son." My throat tightened as though invisible fingers had curled around it. I debated what to do. If I stood up suddenly and told him we had to leave, would that trigger whatever danger the text was warning me about? If I stayed, was I defying someone who could see us, someone with eyes in the room right then, watching? My pulse raced in my ears, loud enough to drown out the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversations. My son's small hand reached across the table to grab a piece of bread, and for a split second, I thought about ignoring the message, pretending it didn't exist. But the words replayed over and over in my mind like a recording on loop. They weren't random. They were urgent. They were deliberate. And they carried the weight of life or death. I forced my face into calmness, swallowing my terror like a bitter pill, and leaned back casually in my seat. My eyes scanned again, but this time slower. A man in a dark coat by the corner glanced up at me too quickly and then looked away. A couple near the window seemed to be whispering more urgently than two lovers should. Even the waiter, a teenager carrying a tray of drinks, seemed to watch us for a fraction of a second too long. Paranoia clawed at me, but deep down, instinct told me this wasn't paranoia. Something was happening. Something orchestrated, planned, waiting for me to make the wrong move. I leaned toward my son, forcing a casual smile, and said, "Hey buddy, want to grab some ice cream after this?" His face lit up instantly, his eyes sparkling with excitement, and he nodded eagerly. That small distraction gave me a chance to think. Ice cream meant leaving the restaurant naturally, without drawing attention. It gave me cover to obey the message. My phone buzzed again, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. My trembling fingers slid the phone closer, my heart in my throat. The new message made my blood run cold. It said, "He's not your son anymore. Don't look back. Just walk." I could barely breathe as I tucked my phone face down beneath the tablecloth, forcing my lips into a weak smile so my son wouldn't sense the storm raging inside me. The restaurant's warm light suddenly felt oppressive, and every clink of cutlery around us became amplified in my head, as if the universe itself was warning me of danger. My son, blissfully unaware, kept talking about a project at school, his innocent enthusiasm a painful contrast to the panic knotting in my chest. My instincts screamed to grab his hand and run, but the mysterious text's warning repeated in my mind, "Don't tell him why." That command alone chilled me to the bone, because it meant that if I said the wrong thing, if I betrayed even a flicker of fear, the threat might strike instantly. My eyes darted discreetly around the room. Was it the man 2 tables away who hadn't touched his food, only staring at us with a stiff posture? Or the woman near the entrance who kept glancing at her phone before looking directly in our direction? My heart hammered, my palms sweated, and in that moment, I realized we were being watched. Whoever sent that message wasn't just warning me, they were telling me I was already in the crosshairs. I swallowed hard, deciding to buy myself time, leaning forward to my son with the calmest voice I could muster, asking about dessert, as if the sweetest distraction could shield us from the invisible eyes that had already chosen us. I rose slowly, making my movement look casual, practiced, just someone stretching after a long day, while my mind raced through escape routes like a chess player calculating moves. I told my son we were going to get ice cream and watched the spark return to his face. As I stood, my hand brushed the edge of the table and my phone vibrated hard enough to make the salt shaker rattle. The screen flashed one new message. I slid it open under the table with fingers that felt numb. "Don't go to the front exit. Use the side door by the alley. There's a man in a dark jacket by the curb." The text was precise, cold, like a navigation command from someone who had eyes on us. I swallowed and nodded to my son as if nothing had happened. No rush, no panic. Because fear in my voice could be the trigger. I kept talking about cartoons and the color of ice cream, letting him pick the flavor he wanted, while my other senses sharpened into a razor. In the corner of my eye I caught the waiter, the kid who'd been hovering, make a tiny, almost imperceptible gesture. He had been instructed too, or maybe he read something in my face. Either way, he looked suddenly alert. I paid the bill with measured movements, slid a few bills into the young man's hand and murmured, "Help us," which was all we needed. He disappeared into the kitchen and returned moments later smiling as if nothing strange had happened, but his eyes told a different story. He would be ready. We rose together and walked toward the side door I'd been instructed to use. My chest pounded so loudly I feared for a moment my son might hear it, but he skipped beside me, clutching his small toy, unaware of the danger. The alley was narrow and smelled faintly of rain and diesel, an ordinary city scent that somehow felt like a relief compared to the stairs inside. As we moved, a silhouette detached itself from the shadow near the curb, tall, purposeful. My hand closed around my son's shoulder but I didn't pull him. I did not want to startle him. The figure drew near and in the dim light I could make out a face I recognized. Not a stranger from a TV wanted poster or a criminal sketch, but someone from my past, someone I had hoped I'd never have to see again, Mark Rourke, my old partner from the case that ruined everything. My heart dropped into my stomach. Mark's lips curled into that same private smile he used to wear when he had the upper hand. "You didn't expect me to let you walk away that easily, did you?" he said softly, loud enough for only me to hear. I kept walking as if the air between us were merely thin fog. The alley led to a parking strip where our car, should have been. Instead, there was an empty space and a smear of rubber where tires had burned out minutes earlier. My breath caught. My mind tried to juggle explanations. Towed, stolen, moved, but the text blasted through my phone like a flare, "Not your car. Don't go after it. Follow the woman with the red scarf to the corner cafe. She'll help." A woman with a red scarf. The instruction sounded absurd and oddly specific, but I had no choice. I had to trust it. We walked on, my steps quicker now, and at the next corner a woman stood outside a tiny cafe, her scarf bright as promised, her eyes scanning the street like a sentinel. She nodded once as we approached and slipped behind us, guiding us toward a different lane, a safer-looking route. I kept my voice light and ordinary, joking about the long line at the ice cream stand we were skipping, and my son skipped along beside me, trusting me completely. The whole time, I felt watched, the prickling sensation of someone trailing us. We took 3 turns and then another, the city noise swallowing our footsteps, until we reached the cafe door. I pushed it open and breathed in the warm aroma of coffee. It felt like shelter. The woman with the red scarf slid into the seat across from me and, without ceremony, said, "You did the right thing. If they see you leave with your son in a panic, they'll make a move. He's watching the front. He's not alone." I thanked her, my voice a whisper, and in those few quiet seconds she explained that a man in a dark jacket had been watching us since we arrived. He'd posted a car earlier to block the front exit and was waiting for a signal to follow us. She said it like it was a fact tabled over morning coffee, not the kind of thing that should make a father's hands tremble. My phone buzzed again, this time a photo appeared, a snapshot of our table from a camera mounted near a lamppost outside the restaurant, the image grainy but unmistakable. Whoever sent the message had eyes everywhere. The woman tapped my arm and slid a small paper across the table with a number and a single instruction, "Call this. Tell them you're with your son and you're at the corner cafe. They'll send a car. Do not go back to the restaurant. Do not confront anyone." I took a breath and dialed, keeping my tone steady while my stomach churned. The voice on the other end was calm and official. Within minutes a sedan pulled up, a driver with a suit and an earpiece stepped out and greeted us like a routine pickup. We left through a back alley, folding into the town's arteries like a little stone beneath the current, and for the first time since that text arrived, I felt a fragile thread of safety. Still, the questions crowded me. Who had eyes on us? Why was someone making the effort to protect us? And most of all, who wanted me gone so badly that they would risk terrifying my son to make it happen? The answers didn't come then, but the night had already changed course, and somewhere between the restaurant and that anonymous car, my ordinary life had slipped its tether. I remember, before I start this last part, to ask you to subscribe if you haven't already. Because if you found even a spark of this story moving, there are more like it waiting. Now, back to that night, as the sedan eased away from the curb and the city light smeared past like watercolor, I let my son curl against me in the back seat, his breathing even, oblivious to the storm we had just stepped out of. I watched his small face in the dim light and felt a strange, raw gratitude for the stranger who'd sent the first message. Whoever they were, they had kept us alive long enough to run, to hide, and to begin asking questions. The driver's phone chimed once and he said quietly, "We're taking you to a safe place for now. Someone will meet us there to talk." I braced myself for a confrontation, for some demand for information, for an accusation to land hard on my chest. What came instead was a quiet room, a kettle, and a woman I recognized only by her voice at first, soft, firm, with a steel beneath it I'd met once during a different life. Her name was Hannah, a contact from my old days, someone who owed me a favor and kept her word. She sat opposite me with a folder, and when she opened it, the photos spilled out, surveillance angles, a map of the restaurant's entrances, candid shots of the man in the dark jacket, and a notation beside his face, Mark Rourke. My jaw tightened at the sight. Mark was the last person I wanted to see again. He was the one whose betrayal had almost ruined me years earlier. Hannah explained, matter of fact, that Mark had resurfaced in a bad way, debts, old grudges, and a new set of dangerous friends looking to settle scores. They'd been watching me, the message said, not because I was an innocent target, but because Mark believed I had evidence that could topple a network he'd tied himself to. He thinks you took something from him, Hannah said, or that you know where it is. He wants it back. He thought scaring you would flush you out. The anger that rose in me was honest and cold. Mark had always used fear as currency. But my fear that night had been overpowered by one sharper feeling, that my son's safety mattered more than vengeance. Yet I couldn't let this slide. If Mark was hunting me, he would not stop at intimidation. I asked Hannah what she needed from me. She said simply, tell us what you remember. Tell us exactly what you have and who you trusted. The truth came out in fits and starts, fragments of a case I'd worked, names I'd whispered only once to a trusted partner. Some things I had hidden out of shame, others I'd buried to protect people who had nothing to do with my past. As the hours passed, a plan formed. Law enforcement, quiet, patient, the kind that moves like shadow, would set a trap for Mark. We would not go back to the restaurant, we would not let him know we were cooperating. Instead, they used the information to follow his leads, to trace the men around him, and finally, 2 nights later, Mark was taken into custody in a sting that felt cinematic but was painfully real. I remember the news alert, my name mentioned briefly in a line about a key witness, and the strange hollow pride at seeing the type of closure I had thought was impossible. The aftermath was messy in the way truth always is, interviews, questions from strangers, calls from people who wanted to be helpful and others who wanted to point fingers. My son, who had slept through it all in a safe place I can never thank enough, asked one small question at the end, are we okay now? I held him close and told him the truth in the simplest way I could, yes. For now. We're safe. The days that followed felt like stepping out into a new light. I kept watch at the window sometimes, nervous and grateful in equal measure. People asked who had sent the messages. I never knew for sure. Hannah said it was likely a friend of a friend, someone Mark didn't suspect, someone who had owed me time. Maybe that's how these things happen, favors repay favors in the quietest ways. What I do know is this. The text that told me to go and not to tell my son saved us. It forced me to make decisions I never wanted to make, it exposed old ghosts I thought were buried, and it reminded me how fragile the illusion of safety can be. If there's a single thing I want you to take from this, it's that sometimes protection comes from invisible hands, and sometimes bravery looks like obeying a message and walking away with the person you love most. We aren't heroes every day. Most days we are parents, workers, neighbors, ordinary. But on the nights unseen threats knock at our doors, the quiet actions we take, listening, leaving, trusting strangers who stand ready, become the threads that keep our family whole. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, if it made you think about the small decisions that can change your life, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these real stories reach others who might need the same reminder. Safety sometimes comes from strangers, and courage sometimes shows up.